Welcome back to continue our discussion talking about changing behaviors. Joining me again is Dr. Daniel Duffy, the Dean of the University of Oklahoma School of Community Medicine. Let's jump in. Now, we were talking about changing the behavior, health behavior related to overeating. A couple more things I wanted to ask you. When kids are growing up, and even sometimes in adulthood, it seems like foods can be used as a reward. You were talking about what we're exposed to and maybe the kinds of things people are buying, and because they may be more economical compared to others. But what about food as a reward? How should that be viewed? And I think it can contribute to the overeating, but you're the doctor, you tell me. How should we view that?
Well, if we put it in the context of this body feeling good. Rewards are things that make us feel good. We feel good. And so we know that sugar foods and high fat and high sugar foods will make the body feel good. Therefore, they are a natural reward, aren't they? And so as parents or as people who are trying to reward other people or celebrate something that's going on, may in fact use high-fat, high-sugar foods. Now that was fine whenever we lived in a society where it was a lot of work to get high-sugar concentrated foods or high-fat foods. It really took a lot of work and a lot of energy to make those occur. Therefore, they were special things in our lives. A birthday cake was a special thing.
Right.
Now, a Twinkie or small cakes are so available and so cheap that they're readily available, and they still have the reward in the body. The body reacts as if it's a reward. Body feels good, but in fact it isn't tied to any social reward at all. It just is there. So it's dangerous living in the world we live in today to use high-fat, high-sugar foods as a reward mechanism. It's much better to use exercise as a reward.
Yeah, because even sometimes when you're trying to get, and sometimes that can reinforce the adult that reinforces that to the child. Sometimes when you're trying to get adults to participate in a meeting or come to a group, and even as the School of Community Medicine, sometimes people may be prone to think, well, we want to reach out to the community and get them to come to this discussion on wellness or whatever it is. And sometimes the foods, therefore, that will be looked at fall in that category because we're not consciously thinking that once again that can be more contributing and what is it reinforcing to people in terms of the reward system. So it's almost like if the physician group is going to have donuts and all of these things, then that must be okay for me to continue that in my life or with my kids, because the doctors wouldn't do if it was all that bad.
And you're right on. And in the School of Community Medicine, our approach to this is to be very, very careful of what we do, because we inadvertently give this message that it's okay to do if we do it. So we have to look at everything we do. What are the meals we serve in our own meetings? What are the attraction, as you mentioned, to having people join us? What we've come to realize is actually our being together socially and doing something socially can have as big a reward in that feeling good as can eating the food. So you
it's
kind of hard for us to believe that.
Exactly. So you kind of flip the script. What I'm going to do is go into a couple of other behavioral issues, and then I want to end up talking about how to sort of change the different ones we've talked about. What do you really do to try to impact that? I want to focus on smoking, because that's a really still big one. Even though some of the smoking rates are decreasing, in other groups they tend to be sometimes increasing. And for kids, once again, if you see adults smoking, it becomes kind of hard for you to believe when they tell you you shouldn't smoke that they're really being upfront with you. So what is it about smoking in terms of, we know they've got the nicotine addiction and things like that, but how does that come about in terms of looking at a behavior issue?
Well, smoking is obviously a behavior. You have to deliberately take out a cigarette, light it, and inhale, and it's something that we learn how to do. It isn't something that we naturally are born doing. So it is a learned pattern of behavior. The thing about smoking is we know that nicotine is the single most addicting drug that we use in our society. It is the most addicting drug. And what do we mean by that is if 100 people smoke a cigarette, about 80 of them are going to want to do it again. Even though it causes us to cough, it causes our first experience with it is unpleasant. The nicotine because we're freebasing it or lighting it and converting it to a gas, we inhale it and it goes instantly to our brain, and every one of the nicotine receptors in our body are fully activated and turned on.
It's sort of instantaneously. You don't have to wait for something.
High. It takes about 3 or 4 seconds to get this instantaneous high from nicotine.
Okay.
Now nicotine is a really pretty remarkable drug. It causes us to focus our attention, so we feel good, focus our attention, and it relieves our anxiety and calms us down.
Whoa.
Now, can you imagine something any better feeling in our society?
Exactly. And what you're saying too, doctor, is how many of us really think of nicotine as a drug?
It's freebasing a drug.
We don't think of it that way.
But that's what it is. It's freebasing a drug.
Okay.
And it was used by our Native American fellows as a very religious activity. It was done to change our state of mind. But right now, when we use it over and over again, we become addicted to it, and we actually aren't having those positive effects. We're having simply the addictive effects. And here's the addiction. When we stop using it, once we become addicted, we feel terrible. We feel much worse than we would have felt had we never used it.
Okay.
So we crave the next hit. And so we're into this addictive cycle. And there's no question, smoking, people who are addicted to cigarette smoking, now there are very few people who can have 1 cigarette every 3 or 4 weeks and not think anything of it. They're using it in a relatively safe way. But so few people can do that it's a very addicting drug.
Now, do we still tend to, and I think we do, but do you find as you're dealing with individuals that there's still a glamorization of smoking? It almost, it's like, I mean, the kids may have another term today other than cool, but that's all I know.
Well, it was sure cool when I was growing up.
Yeah, there could be another word they're using. But, I mean, is it still where that's pretty glamorized, or it's looked as being really in the know and kind of like, you know, you're in the social group if you're smoking and those types of things?
The only kids I'm running around with much these days are my grandkids, and the schools are doing such a wonderful job that these kids are pretty grossed out by the idea of smoking. And I've been with them where they actually comment rather cruelly, actually, when they see other people around smoking. So at least at this young age, 7, 8, and 9, it doesn't seem to be very glamorous to them.
Okay.
Now, who knows what's going to happen, and we obviously do know that in the preteen and teen years, it becomes a part of the culture. In fact, it's the entry drug in all drug use. So it's the first drug that most people try, and since it's so addicting, it really has it's a very risky drug.
And so it may not be as glamorized among children or looking as social, like I said, because we're doing a better job of educating, but sometimes that preteen or teen, the social group then has more of an impact, and that may be what's taking off with it. Okay, what I'm going to do is take another really quick break, and then I'm going to come back and talk about the behavior of looking at actual drug use beyond nicotine, which now we know is truly a drug, and then we're going to wrap up with what can we do to change these behaviors. Okay, please stay with us. We'll be right back.